Lessons 13, 14, and 15 take some of the concepts we've already learned and apply them to new situations. 13 and 14 deal with different time signatures. We've already looked at 4-4. Now we're going to look at 3-4 and 2-4. Nothing changes about how a time signature works. The top number tells you how many beats are in a measure, and the bottom number tells you what type of note to count as a beat. You don't have to worry too much about the bottom number. For this entire workbook, we're only going to see times in 4, so it means the quarter note gets the beat. But that is what it means. The bottom number of the time signature tells you what note counts as a beat, and the top note of a time signature tells you how many of those notes will fit in a measure. So let's take a look at 2-4 time. 2-4 means 2 beats can fit in a measure. So I can draw a quarter note, which is worth 1 beat, and another quarter note worth 1 beat. 1 plus 1 is 2. My measure is complete, so I draw my bar line. Now I'm in my next measure. I'll start with a quarter note again. I have 1 beat left in this measure. I'm going to add a quarter rest. A rest counts as a beat. Even though there's no sound during a rest, it takes up 1 beat of that measure. So I have 1 beat of a note, 1 beat of silence. 1 and 1 is 2. My measure is done. Now, let's say I want one more measure. We know we end with a double bar line. Put that in there. I want to fill the entire measure with sound. I cannot do this. In the past, we could do that. A whole note is worth 4 beats. It would fill 4 beats of the measure, the entire measure. Here, however, 4 is too much. I can only fit 2 beats in a measure. So to make this work, I add a stem and make it a half note. A half note gets 2 beats. The same is true in 3-4 time. I get 3 beats in a measure. So let's start with a half note worth 2. I'll add a chord note because 2 plus 1 equals 3. Put my bar line in. I'm going to add a half rest. Remember, half rests sit on the line like a hat. That's worth 2 beats, even though it's 2 beats of silence. So I'm adding another quarter note. 2 plus 1 equals 3. My measure is complete. Add a bar line. I want to end it now. I'm going to give you a preview of what comes next. We can't put a whole note in here because 4 is bigger than 3. A 4-beat note doesn't fit. A half note is worth 2 beats. If I wanted to fill this entire measure with just 1 note, I would add what's called a dotted half note. It's a half note with a dot after it. It's worth 3 beats. And that is what's covered in lesson 15. We're going to go over it in a little bit. But before we do, I want to go over the difference between identifying the rhythmic value of a note and writing in the counting, or writing in the beats. Writing in the rhythmic value of the note is what we've already done, telling us how many beats a note is worth. So I know a half note is worth 2 beats, a chord note is worth 1 beat, 1 beat, 1 beat, a quarter rest is worth 1 beat, a quarter note is worth 2 beats, a whole note worth 4 beats, 2 more half notes, 2 beats each. What I just did was write in the rhythmic value of each note. Now I'm going to write in the counting. Remember, there are 4 beats in a measure. Each beat is essentially a location within that measure. So this first note is a half note. It's worth 2 beats. So it gets beats 1 and 2 of the measure. Beat 3 will line up with this quarter note, and beat 4 with this last quarter note. Moving to the next measure, I start on beat 1 with a quarter note. The quarter rest counts as time, so even though it's a rest, it counts as a beat. 1 beat is my beat 2. The last note in the measure is worth 2 beats, so 1, 2, 3, 4. In measure 3, I have a whole note. It gets all 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, and 4. My final measure is 1, 2, 3, 4. That is the difference between writing in the rhythmic value of a note and writing in the counting, or writing in the beats is sometimes what the question will ask. It'll say, write in the beats under the notes. That is what that means. This is the thing most students get wrong in these next few lessons. They write in the rhythmic value instead of the counting. So if you see a question that asks you to write in the counting or write in the beats, it means what we did down here at the bottom. Now, let's move on to lesson 15, the dotted half note. If the stem goes up, it will look like this. If the stem goes down, it looks like this. The dotted half note is worth 3 beats. That's easy to remember and easy to memorize. But I want to talk about what the dot actually means. The dot is essentially a symbol that represents a mathematical equation. The dot means to add half the original value of the note. So let's look at what that could mean with just numbers. 6 dot. So 6, the dot means add half the original value. Half of 6 is 3. So 6 plus 3 equals 9. 6 dot equals 9. 4 plus half of 4, which is 2, equals 6. 10 dot, or 10 plus half the original value of 10. 10 dot means 10 plus 5, so 15. So now here's how it applies to notes. We know a whole note is worth 4 beats. I'll show my work. We know the dot means to add half the original value, so it's plus half of 4. I don't know all my math symbols anymore. So 4 plus half of 4 equals 6. A dotted whole note equals 6 beats. A dotted half note, it's what we already learned, it's worth 3, but here's the why. A half note is worth 2. The dot means add half of 2, which is 1. 2 plus 1 equals 3. Now, this last one is only a little trickier because we're no longer dealing with whole numbers. A quarter note is worth 1 beat. Dot means add half of the note to itself. So half of 1 is half. 1 plus half equals 1.5. This note is worth 1.5 beats. So that's how the dot works. Right now, in lesson 15, you're only dealing with the dotted half note. So even if you're a little confused about the dot right now, just remember dotted half note equals 3 beats, and you'll be able to get through this work. So that's it. Really, I should have called this more time signatures plus the dotted half note, but I didn't. That covers lessons 13, 14, and 15. Remember, those are due on Wednesday. Make sure you upload them on Wednesday. That gives us a chance to check them over, to catch any misunderstandings you might have before you submit 16 on Friday, and we actually grade that for accuracy. As always, just email us with any questions you might have.